This episode of Around the Oval is brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage.
Hey, Ohio State fans, Alex Gleitman here, back with another edition of Around the Oval, brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. The Buckeyes dominated Purdue last week to advance to 9-1 on the season. They will take on Michigan State this week in the Horseshoe at noon on ABC to try to go to 10-1 and take on Michigan for all the marbles, the Big Ten East Championship, a trip to Indianapolis, and keeping their college football playoff hopes alive. To talk about that game, the Michigan game, potentially Big Ten Championship, as well as 2022 recruiting, we bring on Bill Greene. Bank, thanks for coming out, joining the show before you hit the links for a nice 18. Maybe the last time you're going to get out this fall.
This might be it today, man. So we're going to take full advantage.
Yeah, for sure. And I know on Buckeye Scoop, you just put up your newest bank blog, the yes, no, possibly, maybe, probably unlikely, basically your rundown of every single recruit that Ohio State's involved in or has been involved in the 2022 class and where you feel that they stand. So I want to talk about first 2022 recruiting, because things looked, when we last did this show together, it was right after the Penn State game, and things were looking up on a number of guys.
Right.
But some doom and gloom, I would say, a little bit since then, to some extent. You had Jimmy Rolder, the linebacker from Chicago, kind of not surprisingly commit to Michigan, but the timing of it, I thought, was a little surprising. I thought he'd wait maybe till right after his season was over. He's got 2 more potential playoff games. So I thought maybe he'd wait, do a couple official visits in December before making a decision, but he decided to just go ahead and pull the trigger to Michigan, which, Ohio State wanted the kid. They wanted another linebacker in the class. He's had a really good senior year. We haven't seen him in person, but the film, I think, looks really, really good. He just flies to the ball and makes plays, and I think he's going to be a really nice player for Michigan. And he would have been a nice compliment to what CJ Hicks and Gabe Powers bring at currently committed at linebacker. So that was one they kind of took on the chin a little bit. And, there hasn't been such great news on the offensive line front as of yet. And on the defensive line front, I mean, Hero Kanu went down to Georgia, took an official visit a couple weeks back, the week after he was at Ohio State, where we all felt really, really good that he was going to end up in Columbus. And Georgia did their thing. And, it seems like they kind of pushed someone out of their class, and maybe that's to make room for Hero. So, let's, I guess, Bill, 2022 recruiting, where do you, we could start talking about some kids a little bit, I guess. Let's do that. I'll make it easy. Quarterback, they're in on Drew Aller, and maybe James Franklin leaving helps them a little bit there. They've offered Devin Brown, a USC commit, who's also looking at Ole Miss, but I'm personally right now not feeling good on either. What's your thoughts on Ohio State adding another quarterback in the 2022 class?
Yeah, with Aller, he wants to go to Penn State and play for James Franklin and Mike Yursich. I think he'll start for him next year. Not so sure he wouldn't have played this year if he was there. He's really good. And I think he's got a clear path to the field there and a clear path to the NFL, and everything's right in front of him there. But as much as he likes those guys, if they go to LSU or USC, I don't think he's going there. I don't think he follows them that far from home. And that would bring Ohio State back into the picture. And he knows the deal at Ohio State. He's not stupid. He knows who's in that quarterback room. But, when you look at, possible transfers and being patient, does he want to be patient? If he has a clear shot at the field at Ohio State, I think they would be, kind of attractive to him if Penn State falls apart. So we have to see there what happens. But I feel really strongly he's not going to go to LSU or Texas with those guys. Then with Devin Brown, does Devin, who I think is really good, by the way, I think he's really good. Does he jump into that room when, he's got other possibilities? USC is going to hire a great coach. And if he liked USC with Clay Helton, I don't know why he wouldn't like USC with the next guy, because the next guy is going to be a pretty good coach, I would think. He did visit Texas. I don't think he's going there. They have their guy in this class. Devin would clearly be that, the Ohio State depth chart looks better than what the Texas depth chart is. With Malik Murphy's their guy, and he knows that. Ole Miss looks appealing to me just because of what they've done with Matt Corral, and it's Lane Kiffin, and So we'll see. Can Ohio State get Devin Brown? I think they probably might be able to, but what do they do with Drew Aller? Are they willing to wait a little bit on Drew, or do they push for Devin now, or do they offer them both and make it first come first serve and try to get one of those two? I don't know yet, because I don't think the Aller decision will come for a while. The interesting thing to me is, do Franklin and Yursich make a decision on their future before the first signing period comes up? And then what does Drew do at that point? Does he wait, or does he go ahead and sign with them? So there's a lot going on here. Things are going to get really good here. I would think in the next, give it another week to 10 days, and it's going to get crazy as we head up to the first signing period.
Yeah, I think after that last game, Thanksgiving weekend, that's when you're really going to see the movement.
Yeah.
And if James Franklin is leaving, he's going to leave then, because wherever he goes, he's going to want to do some work.
Save the recruiting class.
Save a recruiting class. So if he stays, Drew's going to stay. I agree with that. If he leaves, it's open. I'd imagine Drew wants to go wherever he is early so that he could get a jump on spring practice and things of that nature. So I think he's going to try to sign in December. But the interesting thing to me is then, okay, Penn State and James Franklin part ways. They bring in a Luke Fickell, a Matt Campbell, a Jeff Hafley, someone along those lines, a Joe Moorhead, who knows who it is, right? And someone along those lines. And then is Drew like, okay, I'm good with that. I'm good with, I imagine Luke Fickell, he'd probably be pretty good with.
Well, he would be good with Fickell.
He almost went to Cincinnati or Iowa State too with Matt Campbell.
I'm gonna tell you right now, if Penn State had not offered him and he had his board the way it is now, he'd be going to Iowa State. Loves Matt Campbell. The family loves Matt Campbell. They would have went to Iowa State over Notre Dame, I believe. So I think Iowa State was going to be the choice there, but boy, Penn State just wowed him and moved ahead of Iowa State. But if Campbell gets the Penn State job, and if Franklin does leave and Matt gets it, they'll definitely stay with Penn State.
Yeah, well, I think it's imperative either way that Ohio State brings in a quarterback, whether that's Devin, Drew, or someone in the transfer portal, because I just think to your point, the musical chairs that are going to happen in that room, it may not happen immediately. I think we probably know one guy who's probably going to leave after this year, but Quinn and Kyle, if they stick it out one more year, it's probably going to go into that spring, kind of like the way Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins battled it out, and the loser goes somewhere else. But we'll see. Let's talk offensive line. And your Carson Hinsman, I'll just comment. I think it's Ohio State, Wisconsin. I'm getting a little nervous for Ohio State the longer it's taking since that last visit from Penn State. Carson was talking to me about starting to make a video and things like that. And you started to feel good about Ohio State coming off that. But the way Wisconsin's playing right now and kind of has to make him feel good. He grew up a Badgers fan, and seeing them dominate in the run game again and play that hard-nosed football, he could start to be kind of heading back that way, but we'll see how that one goes. I think the big name on the offensive line right now that they need to get, in my opinion, but may not be getting, is Ernest Green. I don't know if they've really jumped back over Georgia after that Penn State visit, and that's not a good sign. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. Do you see Ohio State adding a fourth, potentially fifth offensive lineman to this class, or do you think that they kind of just end with the three that they got?
And they can't stick with three, especially the three they have. They can't do that. I still have them in the game for Ernest Green. If I had to make a wager today with my money, I would bet on Georgia, but I don't think it's over and done and finished. I think they can still pull that one out. You got to fight it out. Cam Dewberry, I think I'm a little more optimistic on Cam Dewberry than I would be Ernest Green, and maybe a little more optimistic than maybe you and Mark are, but I still think they're in that Cam Dewberry deal. And that kid is a huge game player, man. And when you got the game players, their whole goal is to throw people off the scent until they sign. So I think Ohio State is in the Dewberry mix. Hinsman, I'm going to admit, I don't think I have good info on Hinsman. And I think you and Mark are probably better to follow on him than I would. They need one of those three. They need one of Hinsman, Green, and Dewberry. And if you lose all three of them, man, I don't know. Then you got to go back and try to fish another Ohio project out of the pool, I guess. But, I haven't given up that they can't land, two of those three, but they need one for sure of those.
Yeah, I agree. They need another one. They need a good one.
Yeah,
And if they don't get a good one, they might have to look in the portal too. That might be a
yeah,
possibility
absolutely,
because I
absolutely.
think, Thayer's gone, Petit Frere's gone. Yeah, you can move Paris Johnson to tackle and you need to do that. But DeJuan Jones should be off to the NFL after next year, and
Man, he may
Paris
be
might be
off.
off.
He might be off to the NFL this year.
He
DeJuan
might
Jones
be.
has been really freaking good.
You're
You know
right.
what I mean? And while I think he does need another year, if I were advising the kid, I would advise him to stay another year. But I'm telling you, he's been better than Thayer this year and just about as good as NPF. And he looks like an NFL dude to me. I just don't know where he would fall in terms of, projections and stuff. But he's
Yeah,
really
if a
good.
guy like him comes back and refines his technical
He could go,
fundamentals, he could go
yeah.
first, he could be a top
Oh
10
yeah.
pick. So
Yeah.
you
I would
have to
tell him
weigh
to come
that.
back.
Yeah, you
I
have
think
to
he
weigh
should
that
come back.
versus because right now he's probably, I don't, who knows, but
Is
I
he
would guess
second
at
or
best,
third?
I
don't know.
was gonna say a third maybe at
He's pretty
best.
good.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
really good.
Yeah. But I think everyone sees that there's still development there that needs to.
Yeah,
I don't think
I
he's a
would.
guy you plug day one into the NFL next year.
No, no.
So yeah, we'll see. But that will be interesting. Let's go defensive line. They have Kenyatta Jackson in. I think we both feel pretty good that
Yeah,
Caden Curry's going to be in,
I think so.
and I think we both think right now that Amari Abor will be in. But I think defense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that one could change as it has many times,
Uh,
but let's say as of today, we probably have those three as in, both of us. I think defensive tackle is a position of big need. I mean, they're going to lose Haskell Garrett. They lose Antoine Jackson. Everyone else is okay. I mean, Teron Vincent should be back, and Ty Hamilton will be back. I really like Mike Hall. I really like Tyleek Williams.
yeah, sure.
But they don't really have that room was kind of thin this year, and I think if they don't get a couple guys in this class, it's going to be thin again. And I think Caden Curry could eventually move inside at 3 tech.
I do.
I'm sure JT could play 3 tech if they needed him to. JT Tuimoloau, but it doesn't look like they're getting Kristen Miller. It looks like he's probably going to go to Georgia. Chris McClellan was going to go to Florida. Who knows now with Dan Mullen's kind of future
Right.
up in arms. I mean, does he go back to Oklahoma? Does he come back to Ohio State? That could be a possibility. But Hero Canoe looked like the guy that we all thought was going to end up in this class, especially after the summer, after the Penn State visit. And now Georgia just wowed him, his parents, Brandon Collier, or his mom, Brandon Collier, everyone on that visit. And there's a lot of buzz coming from Athens that they think they're going to get Hero Canoe. So how do you see defensive tackle recruiting the rest of the way playing out?
Well, I got to tell you, with Hero Canoe, he would be the very opposite of a guy like Kristen Miller or Chris McClellan. Those guys were game players a little bit. Miller definitely is, but McClellan kind of is too. Hero Canoe, there's no game player in this guy. He wasn't raised in this country. He doesn't know how to play the recruiting game. So when the info starts to leak out about Hero Canoe, it's very believable because it's not spin coming from his camp. When info comes out about Kristen Miller, man, you better beware because that info is probably wrong. But with Hero Canoe, when you start hearing things about the mom and Hero and his mentor and that group, I think it's probably true. And I think Georgia has made a move on Ohio State. And I would have bet Ohio State had that kid locked and loaded. You put a gun to my head and force me to pick today, I'm still going to pick Ohio State for Hero Canoe. But man, not with the certainty I would have had, a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago. I thought that was done, dead, over. And now I don't know. I think you're in a battle now for Hero Canoe. I think they're getting Caden Curry just like you do. Shamar Stewart, Marvin Jones, those are gone, not coming back. Amari Abor, if you force me to make a pick today, I'm picking Ohio State. There's other schools in it, but I think it's going to be Ohio State. I think not, no promise there, but so I think if you come out of this, with Curry and Abor, and I still think Gabe Powers is a D end, and then you fight it to the end for those other kids that you're in on, so I still think this, and I love Kenyatta Jackson, by the way. I would have him higher based on my guys in Florida having him higher than most other people. So I think this ends up being a heck of a class, a D-line class. Maybe not as good as we thought it was going to be, but I view D-line potentially where I think it's going to be totally different than where I think O-line is potentially going to be on National Signing Day. So I'm real optimistic on D-line. I really am.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think that tackle spot they got to get Canoe. I think that he's a difference maker at the next level. And I think Larry Johnson could do it. He's got the relationship there. And I think he can try to figure out a way to get that done before signing day, and he announces at the All-American Bowl. But we'll end on a high note for recruiting defensive backs. I think they're pretty much done at corner. It's the two safeties that are out there, Zion Branch and Xavier Wampa. I feel more confident than ever that they're getting Zion Branch.
Yeah.
I think you agree with that. Wampa is the one that is a little bit, I still think I like Ohio State. I've liked them for a while. I think that they've been the constant. A&M, Notre Dame, Iowa, all those schools have been mentioned as, potential landing spots. But the one constant throughout the whole process has been Ohio State. And I think the relationships are there with the coaches. I think the relationships are there with the other commits. I think all the rumors about him worrying about can him and Zion Branch be on the same class, I think that's BS, because I think that there's two safety positions and they're two different players and they both fit those safety positions, I think, very well. There's a very clear need for Ohio State at the safety position if you watch them play this year. So I still feel good about Ohio State landing Branch, and I feel good about them landing Wampa. And, I think that will be a really strong finish for this Ohio State secondary that did need a little bit of a reload once again this cycle. So Bank, I'll let you end with your thoughts on the safeties.
Yeah, I have Branch in, and I'm willing to, that's probably my final answer. It's probably been my final answer for a long time. So I have Branch in the class, and, if I'm wrong, you ain't getting no virgin there. I've been there before. So, but I think he's in. Wamka, man, again, it's always been Ohio State. And for a while, it was Ohio State against A&M, then Ohio State against Iowa, then Ohio State against Notre Dame. But it's always been Ohio State. You've never seen it as an Iowa-Notre Dame battle. Ohio State's always that school in there, and that makes me think that they're getting him. I love the relationships they have with that kid. I think they've done a great job explaining to him how he and Branch can coexist and flourish together in that defense. So Branch, I have dead solid 1,000% in the class. Wampa, I favor Ohio State, and gun to my head, I'll pick Ohio State for Wampa.
Yeah, that would be a good finish for Ohio State, and that would be positive.
Yes.
And I still think there's going to be a surprise or two National Signing Day. They're going to have a little bit of room in the class if they don't get some of the guys we talked about that we don't think they're going to get right now. And so you never know late who they decide to move on. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if they move on let's just say they need an offensive lineman, they move on a Carter Smith late or something like that.
Right.
Could they flip him from an Indiana? I absolutely think so. If they do the right thing. I'm not saying it's going to be Carter Smith, but there could be guys like that just pop up, or coaching changes that happen. Guys leave. Lincoln Riley leaves Oklahoma, goes to LSU, for example. Could you then start to rate Oklahoma's class? Same thing with Florida and Dan Mullen. So we'll see what happens. It could get really interesting down the stretch, and we'll have full coverage on Buckeye Scoop of that for sure. Shifting gears a little bit and just using the last segment of the show, let's talk about Ohio State's season the rest of the way. They got Michigan State at home. They're at Michigan. If they win both of those games, or get some help if they lost one, they are going to go to the Big Ten championship in Indianapolis against, right now, likely Wisconsin, potentially Iowa, I guess, is the other option right now. And Minnesota still technically might be in it somehow. But I think it's going to be Wisconsin. And then, of course, if they win all those, they'll be in the playoff, and they'll have a semifinal match and then a potential championship game. So I guess let's talk about the games that are, that we know who the opponents would be. Let's say Michigan State, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Michigan State, the game, I was actually glad, if you're pulling for Ohio State, I was glad to see the spread. I think it's sitting at 19 now.
Yeah, huge.
I think that's a good sign for Ohio State. If you're, take like looking at it like us, because I think, Vegas, I always, Vegas is always smarter than all of us. And if that spread was like 12.5 or so, I'd be a little bit more nervous, I think.
Like Nebraska.
But
Like
seeing
Nebraska was.
right.
When, they should have been 20 to 25-point favorites over Nebraska. When you saw it was 13 or 14, people couldn't
something
wait
was fishy
at Ohio State,
Yeah.
and lost.
And I know it's a different time of the season, but at the same time, they only had Ohio State, I think, 15 points over Rutgers, and they beat them by about 50. So, so they do get it wrong sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But I think seeing the number 4 versus the number 7 team in the country should never be a 19-point spread. So I think they feel good about how Ohio State matches up in this one. Michigan State's pass defense is horrific.
Yeah.
And that's Ohio State's strength. Mel Tucker's a good defensive coach, so I'm sure he'll try to figure some things out for this one. But, Michigan State does have a really good running back in Kenneth Walker. He's a Heisman candidate. Peyton Thorne, look, I think you get pressure on him, he's going to struggle. And if you can shut down the run, he's going to struggle. But if the run game's going, he's been able to go downfield a little bit this year. And they got Jaden Reed, who's a nice downfield threat. I don't think Naylor's playing, but he'd be another one too. So, they're definitely an upgraded team through the transfer portal. They only have 1 loss. They beat Michigan this year in an incredible comeback win, even though I don't think that they were the better team. But let's talk Michigan State first. Bank, is this game, do you feel really good about Ohio State kind of moving to 10-1 and going to Ann Arbor? Or how do you feel about this game off the cuff?
I do. I think Michigan State is they're good. They're really punched above their weight all year. I think they've had a great season. I think before the year, their win total might have been 6, so nobody saw this coming. So, man, props to Mel Tucker for what they've done this year. But I don't think they're as good as Ohio State. I think this is going to be a shootout where I do think they're going to score on Ohio State. Kenneth Walker's going to hurt him. He's good. Peyton Thorne's not good, but he's as good as Adrian Martinez or O'Connell. He's like the rest of those guys. And if you give him time, he's going to hit people. I mean, they can't cover people back there. Ohio State's not good covering people. We see it every week. Martinez had some opportunities when he wasn't sacked against Ohio State. He's just too inaccurate. And Ohio State, Tyreek and Zach Harrison, they were all over him. Last week, no pressure in that game at all. Guy throws for 400 yards, 31 points, should have been 38 points if David Bell doesn't drop a ball. So Michigan State's going to get their points. I think they're going to put up 30 on Ohio State, but Ohio State might put 50 on them. So from a gambling perspective, I think the over, and then that total's got to be in the high 60s, I would think. And I think they'll go over that. But I think Ohio State can beat Michigan State. I don't think you can beat Ohio State in the Big Ten by playing a 45-40 game. I think you need to make it a rock fight. You need to be more physical than they are. And you need to have a shot in the fourth quarter. Keep it close. Penn State, Oregon, Nebraska. You're seeing, CJ Stroud fumbles that ball against Nebraska. I mean, if Nebraska recovers that ball, we could be talking about a 2-loss Ohio State team right now. So I think that's the way. And I don't think Michigan State, the old Michigan State under D'Antonio, could have absolutely played this game. And they did play this game and beat Ohio State at this game. I don't think this current Michigan State team I don't think they've got enough lead in their pants to out physical this Ohio State team. So I think it's a 50-30 game that Ohio State wins. Now, I think Michigan does have, I think they've got the physical ability to battle Ohio State. The thing with them, I just worry, it's Harbaugh peeing down his leg in pregame. Do they really think they can beat Ohio State? They haven't done it for so long. They've gotten killed so many times. I just don't know if mentally they are ready to line up and beat Ohio State. Physically, I think they have a lot of the things that you need to keep Ohio State in the 20s. Like the teams that have beaten Ohio State and challenged Ohio State, that's how they've been there. You keep them in the 20s. I think they've got the stuff to do that. I think they can run it. And I think McNamara can Craig Krenzel it up a little bit, control, pass, play some trestle ball. With them, I just don't know mentally if they really feel they can stand up to the bully and be there all day. I need to see it because we haven't seen it in a long time. So that would be my question here. I don't think Michigan State can slow down the offense. I don't think Michigan has it mentally, the toughness that they can just stand there for 3 hours with Ohio State.
Yeah, I think the Michigan State game, like I agree with you. Like I'm toying with like a 52-31 or a 48-24. Maybe Ohio
Right.
State gets a couple turnovers, and if they could stop Kenneth Walker, I mean, it's going to be, make them one dimensional in passing. It could be ugly, but I'm thinking something like that. I agree with you. I think that one won't be too difficult, but I am, as an Ohio State supporter, I would be very nervous about Michigan. I think on the road with
Right.
CJ Stroud, who I think is good, but he's playing to me, like a redshirt freshman. He's had his moments. And then I think against most teams with a pulse, maybe other than Purdue, he's been good. Maybe not the reason that they lost or the game was close, but he hasn't been Justin Fields or Dwayne Haskins even. And I think that's understandable and it's okay. But I think, with the struggles the running games had, and you don't want to be in that game throwing the ball 50 something times a game. You want to be able to control the line of scrimmage and run the ball and be balanced and keep Michigan guessing all game, you want that to be more of a shootout, playing in the high 30s, 40s.
Yeah, definitely.
Versus Michigan, because I don't think that they could keep up. I think the good thing against Michigan is, if you look at their schedule, they haven't really played a team that can challenge them vertically the way Ohio State can. I mean, you're talking about Washington, Rutgers, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Northwestern, Indiana, Penn State. None of those teams throw the ball really, really well. Maryland does this week, but they're not good. But maybe we'll see if they have some success on Michigan's secondary, because I don't think their secondary has been tested. I think their front seven is very, very good,
Really good.
And positioned really well to stop the Ohio State running game the same way Penn State, Nebraska, Oregon did to some extent. And then also Hutchinson and Ojabo are really good as pass rushers, and they're going to be able to get pressure on CJ Stroud. So is he going to be able to step up to that challenge with getting sacked, getting hit, getting pressure on him? He's going to have to run a little bit in that game too, escape pressure and things like that, and make some plays. So I think that's going to be really key. And then on the other side of the ball, I mean, look, Michigan on paper, Ohio State should win this game. I don't think Michigan's offense is really that good. You stop their run, you should be able to do some things. But as you said, if they're not turning over the ball and Cade's being efficient, I mean, the Ohio State defense, let's call a spade a spade. It's very, very beatable if they're not getting pressure on Cade McNamara. So I agree with you, Bank. I think if Michigan wants to win that game, they probably have to win something like a game in the 20s or very low 30s, 31-27, 24-23, something along those lines. So I'm with you there. I would be very nervous about that game. And then I think we talked about this before the show, and we'll end with this. Wisconsin, if it's Iowa in the Big Ten Championship, I actually think Ohio State will roll them. I think if it's Wisconsin, they are playing much better. And look, I think you have to look at who the competition is. They haven't played anyone that great, but they are looking better. Braylon Allen, the freshman, they've had him come in at running back, and he's been much better. Graham Mertz still stinks. He can't throw the ball, but and I think that will be their kind of like they're doing in. But the defense has really stepped it up. I mean, they beat Iowa, 27-7. They beat Purdue 30-13. They beat Rutgers 52-3 the way they're supposed to. Northwestern 35-7 the way they're supposed to. So I'll be interested to see them play Nebraska this week, and then they got a rivalry game on the road against Minnesota. They got to get through those two. But I think it's going to be Wisconsin there. And while I do think if Ohio State gets through the next two games undefeated, I think they will beat Wisconsin. But I think it's going to be similar to maybe what you saw a couple of years ago in the Big Ten championship game. I'm not saying they're going to have to make that crazy comeback in the second half, but I think it will be a dogfight in the first half, and then maybe Ohio State pulls away in the second half. How do you see that potential matchup?
Yeah, I think Wisconsin is a better version of Michigan. To me, right now, they're the number 2 team in the Big Ten behind Ohio State. I think Wisconsin has found themselves. I don't know what went on the first month of the season when they tried to be Oregon. They're back to being Wisconsin now. And that O-line really has found themselves. Braylon Allen is a stud. How that guy wasn't the number 1 back from day one, I don't understand. They messed around with some other runners, but I think they're a better Michigan the way they're playing now. And I think they would have that mindset that they're going to come for a rock fight with Ohio State all day long. They're going to be there all day long. They may have the best defense in the country. I think Georgia's better, but they're not far behind Georgia. I mean, that defense is amazing. And Jim Leonard is a freaking genius. they could hold Ohio State in the 20s. And then you never know. Get a few breaks, a few turnovers, get the lead, run the ball. Wisconsin, I think, can beat Ohio State. I would think they would have the best chance of beating Ohio State of the three teams that we think Ohio State's going to play. Michigan State, Michigan, Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin could beat Ohio State. I think they're a better version of Michigan. We talked about what Michigan has to do to win. I think Wisconsin could do all those things. Plus, they would have that mindset, and they've got Jim Leonard as the D coordinator. I think they're dangerous. I think Wisconsin's really dangerous.
Yeah, I agree with you that they're dangerous. I don't know if I have them over Michigan yet. I think Michigan, just being on the road in that situation, and the pass rushers that they have at defensive end, I just think that they're a little bit of a bigger threat. But I agree with you. Look, if Ohio State gets through these next 3 games without a loss, they 1,000%, despite some of the struggles they've had this year, they 1,000% deserve this, maybe more than any other team, because Georgia's dominant, but they haven't played anyone. And Alabama, if they beat Georgia, they'll obviously deserve it too. But you can potentially argue Ohio State should be the number 1 seed if Georgia loses to Alabama in the SEC championship game and Ohio State runs the table and looks good doing it. So
no doubt.
We'll see how it's going to play out. It's going to be exciting, both recruiting and seeing the Buckeyes on the field the rest of the way. Definitely keep it tuned in to Buckeye Scoop for all coverage, recruiting, and team. And Bang, thanks for joining the show. Appreciate it. And we'll see you listeners next week.
This episode of Around the Oval was brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. If you've been thinking about refinancing or buying a house, check out our sponsor, Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. They offer low rates for refinancing and home purchase loans, including first-time home buyer programs, down payment assistance, and cash-out home equity loans. Check out revolutionmortgage.com/tpennington.